Hello, I'm Claire.
And I'm Sarah.
And we're going to share with you how to take part in Earthwatch Europe's Naturespace Challenge.
We're going to talk about what it is and why we need you to take part. We'll be showing you how to do it, what you need, and the kind of information we'd like you to collect.
The Naturespace Challenge is part of Earthwatch Europe's Naturehood programme. Naturehood is a community project with wildlife at its heart. It's about individuals taking actions within communities which help to improve outdoor spaces for wildlife and for us.
You can be part of Naturehood whether you have a window box or a wildflower meadow, a garden, a patio, or even a balcony.
The actions you take in your nature space can directly affect a type of animal. So for example, a bird feeder with bird seed in it directly supports birds that eat seeds. Or they can support wildlife indirectly. So a flower-rich lawn that increases the insect population indirectly supports birds that eat those insects. The Naturespace Challenge looks at the full range of biodiversity you can find in nature spaces, allowing us to understand the cascading effects of increasing certain types of wildlife actions, how these actions work together, and what density they are required at across the landscape. The actions you take and the wildlife you find will change throughout the year, so we'd like you to do the Naturespace Challenge once each season. As Sarah's already said, outdoor space of any size can be a home for wildlife, so let's go and see what we can find.
The Naturespace Challenge comes in two sections. One which you can do from the inside, looking out, and the other one which gets you outside. We'll talk you through all the sections and what you need to do to get the most out of the survey. In order to build up a picture of what wildlife people have in their gardens and outdoor spaces, we're going to be looking at a range of things. We're looking at birds and mammals, ground dwellers like insects, amphibians and reptiles, pollinators like bees and wasps and flies, and ponds for those that have them. And also we'd like to know about what garden features or wildlife homes you already have. So a bird feeder or a sparrow box would count.
Before you start the Naturespace Challenge, you're going to find it useful to grab a little bit of equipment. The first thing you're going to want to do is access the Naturespace Challenge either on the Naturehood app or Naturehood website, and you can do this on your phone, tablet, or you can print out a PDF and upload the data online afterwards. If you're using your phone or tablet, please make sure you have internet connectivity for the duration of the challenge, otherwise your data may not be saved. For both the indoor and outdoor sections, you're also going to need to make sure that you have a timer. Now this can be a stopwatch, it could be a kitchen timer, or it could be an app on your phone or tablet. When you're looking at birds, binoculars are really helpful, but if you don't have them, don't worry. When we get outside, we're going to use a white-bottomed plastic tray or a baking tray lined with white paper and a dustpan brush to brush insects into the tray. A dustpan brush isn't essential. If you've got a pond, we're going to be pond dipping, so we'll need a net or a plastic sieve. Please don't use a metal sieve because it can really damage the wildlife or your pond. Lastly, check the weather conditions. Try not to do the Naturespace Challenge when it's raining. And if you're doing it in summer and looking for pollinators, make sure the temperature's over 13 degrees centigrade.
When you take up the challenge, we're going to ask you a few questions about the space that you're in and what the weather conditions are like. This is going to influence what you have in your garden and what you might see. During the Naturespace Challenge, we'll ask you to take photos. We'd also like to know how confident you are in identification, and if there are any that you're really unsure about, flag it up and let us know.
The first thing we're going to look for are birds. If you have a nice view of your garden, you can do this from a window. If not, find a quiet seat, wait a few minutes, and then start the survey.
You'll be recording what species of birds and how many come into your garden. A bit like the Big Garden Bird Watch. You'll spend 20 minutes recording anything that actually comes into your garden, so not just flying over, I'm afraid. And you might want to top up your bird feeders or your bird table beforehand, just to encourage those visitors. In the app and the field guide, you'll find plenty of pictures and descriptions to help you identify the birds and other organisms that we ask you to do as part of the challenge. For birds in particular, think about the colour of the plumage, the feathers, the beak shape, the colour of the legs and the size. They're all important and they'll all help you identify the birds.
Next is mammals. Think back over the last 3 months and record every mammal you have seen in your nature space and approximately how frequently you've seen it.
For the mammal section, we need you to think about what you've seen in the garden for the last 3 months and record it. You can do this from inside, particularly if the weather's not so good. There are plenty of descriptions and pictures for you to see on the app that will help you identify what you've got. In my garden, I've seen a squirrel, a rat, I think, in the compost bin. We get bats overhead at night, and I'm pretty certain we've got a hedgehog, although I've never seen it. So looking at the app, what I would do, so we've definitely got a squirrel. He's here most days on the bird feeders. I haven't seen a rabbit. Hedgehog, I think we've got one at least weekly, but I've only seen evidence. I haven't seen it myself. What else have we got? And the rat. If you keep going down, I think we pretty much have a cat that visits our garden. Oh, a bat, yeah. So we probably get those daily. We have a cat, hopefully, that comes no more than weekly. And then if you scroll down to the bottom, we'd just like to know how confident you are. So I would say I'm pretty confident, very confident on what we have. And this would also be where I could upload the pictures.
Now it's time to get outside and look for those ground dwellers, the invertebrates, the amphibians and the reptiles. This is when some of the equipment we mentioned earlier would be really useful. So a light washing up bowl, maybe a tray lined with paper, a dustpan brush so you can access some more of those insects, and a stopwatch so you've got some idea of the time that we're going to ask you to do the recording on. It would also be great if you had a camera or a phone to hand so you can take some photos of the images that you see.
There are over 27,000 species of insects in the UK, and 6 species of reptile and 7 amphibians. Not a fair split. But it does mean that if you spot an amphibian or a reptile, you're way more likely to be able to work out which species it is. And from the insect point of view, you're likely to have quite a few more insects in your nature space than you think.
For this part of the survey, we're asking you to find 2 different sites in your nature space. So try and find spaces which look different. Look around your space for places with lots of opportunities for organisms to hide. Each animal has its own natural home or habitat. So if you look, try and find 2 contrasting places, and that will give you a bigger range of insects, amphibians and reptiles to find. For my first site, I'm going to choose this flower bed, but you could choose a lawn, a compost heap, a hedge, a flower pot, or any other area of your nature space that you'd like to investigate. Ideally, the site will have some ground cover, so maybe some stones or some leaves that can be lifted up or sorted through, and plants that are growing in the space or hanging over the space. You should focus on a size that's about A3, so I think most of you know what an A3 piece of paper looks like, so that's roughly the area that we're looking at. You can mark it out with stones, or you can just estimate.
To find ground dwellers, we're going to follow 5 simple steps. Firstly, stand and scan your site and record any animals that you see. Secondly, we're going to look under rocks and stones, but be ready to spot quickly, as the animals under these generally don't like light, so will run for cover or bury themselves. Thirdly, look through the leaves and surface debris in your site. You'll find it easier to spot animals if you leave the leaves and surface debris into the white bottom tray. Fourthly, use your dustpan and brush to gently brush along plant stems, bushes and tree branches that overhang your site, so that organisms that are on them fall into your white bottom tray and you can see them more easily. Don't worry if you don't have a dustpan brush. You can shake the stems and branches instead, and that will have a similar effect. Finally, all that brushing and shaking probably hasn't dislodged all of the critters into your white bottom tray. So we're going to do a final check along plant stems and tree branches, under leaves and inside flowers, and record any animals that we find there. Once you're done, return all the animals back to the site and record how confident you were in the identifications that you made. If you found any identification particularly challenging, you can flag that below that animal's picture. As you go through the challenge, don't forget to snap a few pictures of the animals that you find. You can access your phone camera or upload pictures at the end of each section by clicking on Browse.
For my second site, I'm going to choose this hedge, but you can choose any other habitat type in your nature space. If you've only got one type of habitat, don't worry, just find a different part of your space to look at. So for example, if you looked at the centre of your lawn, go to the lawn edge. Or if you chose one pot plant with lots of big plants in, find one that's got a smaller one in a slightly different space.
To look for pollinators in your nature space, look for an area where flowers are in bloom and insects are flying around. If you can't see any insects, choose an area with lots of flowers. You can choose a space anywhere between an A3 size or to 10 steps. You're going to watch this area for 5 minutes and look for insects that are on the flowers as well as those that are buzzing around them. Don't forget to set your timer, record how many pollinators you see, and take photos of what you spot. If you have a pond, you'll be asked to perform a pond dip. The number and diversity of species found in a pond is a great indicator of how healthy it is. Whatever size of pond you have, you'll need to be careful when dipping. Before starting, make sure that you've washed your hands so that you don't transfer any creams or oils into the pond or to the organisms that you find within it. First, look into your pond and record everything that you see. I've already spotted a newt, some pond skaters, and some freshwater snails. Then, fill your light coloured washing up bowl or your baking tray lined with white paper with 2 centimetres water, preferably water from your pond. The best way to pond dip is to put your net or plastic sieve into the water by vegetation and agitate it up and down. Then sweep smoothly through the water by the vegetation. Don't go all the way to the bottom or you'll pick up lots of mud and debris and that's going to make it really difficult to see what you find. Likewise, try and only get a fistful of pond algae. Any more than that will make it really difficult to see as well. Put all of this into your white bottom tray and then have a look. Return everything back into the pond and then you can do your next pond dip.
Lastly, tell us about all the great features and additions you already have in your garden that wildlife might like, such as a lawn, a vegetable patch, flower beds, and the food or housing you already provide to wildlife. I'm lucky enough to have a pear tree and a gooseberry bush, both of which are in fruit, so I can add that to my survey too. We try hard in our house to help the birds, so we have bird boxes and bird feeders, and I'll include this information about them both in this part of the challenge.
Understanding what features you have and how you manage them will give a better picture of how they're helping to support wildlife and influencing what you find. Enjoy the Naturespace Challenge and discovering what wildlife is on your doorstep. It is just one of loads of simple ways you can make wildlife welcome as part of the Naturehood family.